Hello, everybody. How's it going out there in YouTube land? Good to see a few people out there wanting to talk about beer today. We're going to be talking about Festbier and Märzen. This is a session called Tasting Together. Normally, you might see Pat Fahey here, but this week I am taking over for Pat to discuss this particular style, or styles, as it were. My name is Neil Witte. I'm a Master Cicerone, and I'm the lead trainer for the Cicerone certification program. And I'm going to be leading the tasting today. We're going to be talking about, like I said, Oktoberfest and Märzen. Welcome, everyone. The purpose of this tasting together, these sessions, is to give kind of a light-hearted, educational look at a particular beer style. We'll pick one a week. Pat's been doing most of these, and he'll walk you through the style, a little bit of history, talk about the recipe formulation, any unique processes that might be used, talk about beer and food pairings, any other relevant information. Do a little question and answer session, make it kind of fun, kick back, end of the day, let you check out according to Central Time here, a little bit early. It's 4 p.m. right now. So I hope all of you have a beer in hand. If you don't have a beer in hand, that's fine. There's still plenty of takeaways. So you might be sneaking this video at work or something, and that's okay. Not everybody can have a beer right now. But if you do have a beer, share it on the side. Let us know what you're drinking. I see a whole bunch of people sharing some. I think somebody here shared like 6 beers. So they've got quite the afternoon planned out here. So for those of you who've done this before, welcome back. We did take a week off. There was no tasting together session last week, but the week before was Sweet Stout with Master Cicerone Pat Fahey. So I hope you all enjoyed that. Coming up a week from today is American Barley Wine. Pat will be back again to talk about that. So that should be an interesting one. Make sure that you're keeping an eye on the chat on the side. Take part in the conversation. Tell us what you're drinking. And those questions at the end of the session here. And while you're here, go ahead and click on the subscribe button and subscribe to the Cicerone Certification Program YouTube channel. That's where you are right now, so it's really easy to subscribe. It'll give you quick access to all of our cool content. All of these tasting together sessions that we've been doing for a few months now, these are all posted on our channel, and you can watch them anytime. So go ahead and click subscribe. In addition to those, there's a whole bunch of other stuff there too. So check it out. So let's go ahead and get started. I have already cracked open my beer. This is, I'm drinking Spaten Oktoberfest. I do have another beer that I'm going to be cracking open later on, assuming I get through this one, because, this week we are talking about 2 styles, 2 related styles, Oktoberfest, Märzen, and Festbier. So I'm going to start off with the Merton. Well, both of these really are styles with, interesting history. There's a lot of things, a lot of discussion points in the history of this beer or these beers. And it's kind of timely too. This is the time of year when everybody's drinking these for obvious reasons. We're right kind of in what would normally be the last few days of Oktoberfest. Oktoberfest in Germany is usually the last couple weeks in September, going into the first weekend in October, and we're right about there. As it starts to get cool out, I start thinking about this style of beer. I start thinking about Oktoberfest, Festbier, something a little heartier, a little more malt character. And I had a hankering for these a few weeks ago, like a lot of you probably did, and went to seek some of these out. So it's kind of the flavor of fall in my mind. So it's very timely. So in addition, this is one of several different styles, several different examples, I should say. A couple of others, I see a whole bunch listed on the side. Paulaner Oktoberfest is one that's readily found. Hocker Shore Original Oktoberfest. There's several of them out there. Some of them are some of the authentic Bavarian versions, and some of them, there's a whole bunch of them made by American craft brewers. So there's a lot of great examples out there. So I'll be popping my Festbier shortly, and I'll talk about that here in a little bit. Again, go ahead and keep posting what you're drinking on the side there. So, as a lot of people know, the roots of Oktoberfest beer go back to the actual Oktoberfest celebration in Munich, in southern Germany, in Bavaria. And that celebration dates back to 1810. This is when the Crown Prince Ludwig of Bavaria got married. And when he got married, they threw a big party, as you do when people get married. And apparently this was one epic party because they kept having that party every year around the same time. And this evolved into an annual celebration of the wedding and is what we now call Oktoberfest. And so there was plenty of beer consumed at this celebration. Originally, the early Oktoberfest beers that were consumed at this celebration were generally the popular Bavarian Dunkel beer, so like a Munich Dunkel. This was something made with probably just some regular brown malt, malt-focused beer. We know a decent amount about what that beer probably was at the time, but this predated some of the modern kilning techniques that were really kind of coming down the pipe pretty quickly. So this beer, this Bavarian Dunkel, was the popular style there for probably about 30 years. But to really understand modern day Oktoberfest beer, Oktoberfest Märzen, we have to understand a little bit about the history of brewing in general, and the fact that it was historically a wintertime activity. If you think about it, there's a lot of reasons why you wouldn't want to brew in the summertime. For one, in times before refrigeration, your raw materials probably weren't super fresh by the time springtime rolled around. You harvest in the fall, you use those raw materials through the winter, and come springtime, you're either running low or they're not super fresh anymore. So that's one reason. But even if you did have good quality raw materials, your fermentations, again, predating refrigeration, your fermentations would get kind of out of control. Temperature control in the summertime is very difficult with fermentation when you don't have refrigeration. So there were a number of reasons why you wouldn't want to be brewing in the summertime. In fact, in 1539, the Bavarian brewers decreed that there would be no brewing between April 23rd and September 29th. And this a few decades later was actually written into law by one of the local dukes as well. So this was something that was taken pretty seriously, and this is a tradition you see in a lot of traditional beer producing countries around the world. So that's not unusual. So because of this, and because of the fact that people wanted to drink beer in the summertime too, even though there wasn't any brewing going on typically, you needed to make enough beer in the early spring to last you throughout the summer, and you needed to make a style of beer that was going to hold up pretty well. And so one of the ways to make a beer that would hold up well is to make something a little bit stronger than normal, because alcohol has antimicrobial characteristics. So a lot of times these springtime beers were a little bit stronger than what you were normally brewing. And in Bavaria, they made a beer that they referred to as a March beer. And the word in German for March is März. M-A with the umlaut, M-A-R-Z. So these March beers, or Märzens, were a little bit stronger, and they would be stored throughout the summer and consumed throughout the summer and even into the late summer months. So this is the style of beer that ultimately became really popular at this Oktoberfest celebration. The first real Oktoberfest as we recognize it today, or Märzen beer as we recognize it today, was introduced in Oktoberfest by the Spaten Brewery in 1841. And their beer was the result of some pretty hard work by the owner of the brewery, Gabriel Sedlmayr. Gabriel Sedlmayr II, his father, was also kind of helped out with this to a certain degree in the development of Munich malt. So Gabriel Sedlmayr II did a lot of research along with his buddy Anton Dreher. They traveled a lot in Great Britain in the 1830s and famously stole samples of wort in a hollow cane from some breweries in the area and took them back home and analyzed them and used what they found out to develop a new type of malt. And Gabriel Sedlmayr invented or developed what we today call Munich malt. So this is a base malt. It's a base malt being a malt that has all of its carbohydrates intact, all the starches available to break down into sugars, has enzymatic activity so you can actually make beer out of it, as opposed to a specialty malt, which only adds color and flavor. This Munich malt is about as dark of a roast of malt that you can get while still maintaining all of those base malt characteristics. So a lot of the ability to make this was as the result of some real advances in malting technology earlier in the 1800s. So the development of this Munich malt was really key in making this new type of Märzen beer. And when it was introduced in 1841 at the Oktoberfest celebration, it was a big hit. And it really became the popular beer. And it kind of dominated the beer that was sold at Oktoberfest for decades. Now, it wasn't the only beer that was consumed there, because beers would kind of come in and out of favor. So it wasn't the only beer consumed there that whole time. There were some changes that occurred. At one point in the late 1800s, for example, they were running out of beer, and they brought in a box strength beer, which was their, Spaten's a little bit stronger beer, and that became really popular for a few decades in the late 1800s. But ultimately, people came back to this, dark amber to brown Märzen beer. And this is what people largely associate, at least in the United States. This is the beer that people associate with the Oktoberfest celebrations. So right now, there are only 6 brewers that are allowed to sell their beer at Oktoberfest. Spaten is one of them. The other 5 are Paulaner, Lowenbrau, Augustiner, Hacker Schorr, and Hofbrauhaus. So outside of those 6, no other German brewer can call their beer Oktoberfest, and no other German brewer can sell their beer at the Oktoberfest celebration. So all of those other brewers, if they're making a beer in that style, they call it a Märzen as opposed to an Oktoberfest. So if you see one of those brewers, if you see basically a German brewer calling it Oktoberfest, it's only going to be one of those 6 brewers. So the one I'm drinking right now, the Spaten, is largely considered to be unchanged over the decades and over the past 170, 180 years. It's a really wonderful beer. The recipe formulation is fairly straightforward for a beer like this. You know, I don't know the exact recipe formulation of this particular one, but most of the Oktoberfest beers, these Märzen beers, are based on Munich malt, and feature some type of German hop variety, although that's typically not a feature in the flavor. The hops used would be some type of noble variety, maybe something like a Hallertau, something like that. Uses a clean fermenting lager strain of yeast. And one of the things that's unique about this is that historically a beer like this would be made with a decoction mash. A decoction mash is a special way of changing the temperature of the mash by removing part of the mash, bringing it to a boil, and then returning it to the mash to raise the overall temperature of the mash and allowing you to activate different enzymes to produce a different character wort. This was a common practice with several different styles in the region, actually, and it's definitely a process that was used to make this, at least back in the day. So some of the traditional brewers are probably not using a decoction mash at this point, but it is a traditional method for this style of beer. So what you end up with is a beer that's light amber to deep amber brown. It's 8 to 17 SRM. Should be crystal clear, should not have any haze, and clean lager character. So no fermentation aroma, which is what you should expect. I mean, when I'm smelling this, I'm really just getting a nice kind of bread crust, toasty malt character. No hop aroma whatsoever. And the flavor is sweet and malt focused. It's got some bread-like, bread crust, toasty characteristics, and that malt flavor is really the main driver. There's not any hop flavor. There's some hop bitterness in there, but it's fairly low, just enough to keep it from being all sweet, because this is not a cloying beer, even though it's very malt focused. IBU range for this, according to the Beer Judge Certification Program, or BJCP, it's 18 to 24 IBUs. This is really, for a lot of producers, kind of a showpiece for Munich malt. Now, there are probably other specialty grains that a lot of brewers use in addition to that Munich malt, but the focus of that malt bill is that Munich malt base. Alcohol content on this is moderate, 5.8 to 6.3, moderate to medium high, just below the cutoff level for a Bock beer. Carbonation is moderate, has a nice crisp finish. Malt flavor should carry over, but not be overly sweet. Doesn't really have a sweet finish. It's kind of more of a crisp finish. This is a nice, hearty, malt-driven beer, perfect for the cool fall months. It's fantastic. So the glass I'm drinking out of is a Willy Becker. This is a fairly common German drinking vessel. This would be for a smaller pour for sure. A lot of pours of this style of beer would be in the liter Mass. If you're drinking a beer like this in Germany, and the liter Mass would be kind of the traditional Oktoberfest serving, although this is not really the beer that you're going to find at Oktoberfest. You may find it in half-liter mugs as well. Some similar styles. Vienna Lager is a similar style. So I mentioned Anton Dreher, Gabriel Sedelmayer's buddy, who traveled with him and did a lot of study on that, on the wort and on the malting process. Anton Dreher developed Vienna malt around the same time that Sedelmayer developed Munich malt, and he developed the Vienna Lager with that malt. So the Vienna Lager is very similar to Märzen beer, only Vienna Lager is a little bit lighter body, has lighter malt flavor and color, and a slightly higher bitterness. And then another similar beer that you're probably wondering when I was going to get to is a Festbier. So some of you may have been wondering why I said that this was not the beer that you're going to get at Oktoberfest. Like, what? I thought this was Oktoberfest beer. Well, the beer that you're going to get at Oktoberfest is going to be something lighter now, because as of about 1990, the majority of the beers served at Oktoberfest are this style that we refer to as Festbier, which is kind of like a golden version of Merton. So I've got one here. I had some Festbier a couple weeks ago, and now the couple stores I checked today were all sold out. But I did find a nice local version of it from Casey Beer Company. This says Vienna style lager on it, but this is actually a nice, good example of a fest beer. And I'll pour a little bit into a glass here, kind of show you. Nice. This is a little bit lighter in color, not a whole lot, but it's significantly paler. And so this is a lot more similar to the beer that you're going to find at Oktoberfest these days. So the Fest beer was originally developed in the mid-1970s by Paulaner. So they apparently felt that the Oktoberfest beers that were served there were a little too filling. They wanted something that was a little more drinkable in that context, because and at Oktoberfest people drink a lot of beer. So having a beer that's too filling, I could see that being a concern. So Paulaner developed this in the 70s. But by 1990, this had kind of taken over Oktoberfest, this lighter version of the beer. So this is what you're going to find now. So this this Fest beer is going to be similar in a lot of ways, but has some key differences. One is in the grist. So the grist, the grain bill for this beer, is going to be based more on Pilsner malt as opposed to Munich malt. Hence the lighter color. Now it may have some addition of Munich malt in it, or Vienna malt for that matter. But this is usually going to be some type of Pilsner malt base. Again, you'll have some type of noble varieties of hops, clean fermenting lager strain of yeast, and process is going to be a little bit more traditional. Some of these may be decocted. This one in particular does undergo a decoction mash, but a lot of them are probably not going to undergo that decoction mash. Decoction mashing, one of the results is that you get a richer, more caramelized malt flavor because of the caramelization of sugars in the kettle. When you're boiling that mash, you caramelize a lot of sugars. So you get a richer, deeper malt flavor, and it can add a little bit to the color as well. So the process might be a little more traditional on this as opposed to that decoction mash. This is a fantastic beer. You can see it's a little more golden in color. These beers range from about 4 to 7 SRM per BJCP. Again, very clear, no cloudiness, clean lager character, no fermentation aromas, and these can have a low to medium herbal or spicy noble hop aroma. It's pretty common. So that's one key difference between a fest beer and an Oktoberfest is you can't expect a little bit of hop aroma, and also that hop aroma will translate into a little bit of that hop flavor as well. So you've got kind of a sweet bread dough, bready, maybe lightly toasted malt aroma and flavor. Again, definitely not cloying at all. Bitterness is low, virtually the same as Oktoberfest, 18 to 25 IBUs. This is really just to keep it from being all sweet. Alcohol content is exactly the same as Oktoberfest, 5.8 to 6.3 ABV. Moderate carbonation, again, with a crisp finish, crisp but not dry. That malt flavor should carry over a little bit, but not be sweet. And essentially, this is just a lighter version of Oktoberfest. It's really fantastic beer. So when I think about food pairings with these beers, there's a there's a number of things I think of, and so when I'm considering a food pairing with a beer like this, one of the things, I think of several different common ways of looking at pairings, some of the kind of basic ground rules. One is to consider the intensity of the beer. The intensity of this beer, both of these beers have similar intensity, about medium intensity. And then I think about complementary flavors. Like if I want to find some flavors that are going to match the flavor of this beer, what are the flavors, what are the main flavors I'm going to be working on to find complementary flavors? So with the Festbier, I'd say we're looking at kind of a cracker, bready malt characteristic. And then as we're getting into this Oktoberfest here, or the Merton beer, this is going to be a little bit more of that kind of toasty malt characteristic. So I've got a little bit different complementary characteristics with each one of these beers. But for a contrasting character, if I want to find something that's going to contrast with this, I'm going to be looking for something to balance out these sweet malt flavors that I've got in both beers. Both of these have low to moderate cutting power. When I'm looking for a beer that can cut through fatty foods or oily mouth-coating characteristics in a certain dish. So both of these have kind of moderate cutting power. Most of it comes from carbonation. So when I'm thinking of some foods, things that come to mind, cheese. I would say both of them would probably go pretty good with a moderately aged Gouda or a cheddar. As those cheeses age, they get richer, they get fuller strength, they get more intense. And when you get like a really long-aged one, they can get really intense, and something long-aged would probably overpower both of these beers, but some medium age would bring the intensity up enough to kind of match with these pretty robust malt characteristics in both beers. So I'm also thinking of roasted meat, like a roast chicken with this Festbier, and maybe even like a roasted pork with the Märzen beer. And at the same time, I'm thinking of the flavors of roasted root vegetables. So I'm thinking, with Merton beer, roasted pork, like a roast pork loin with roasted root vegetables. Those sweet flavors, kind of toasty flavors, really match the malt characteristic in this. The caramelized meat and that the sweet onion and potato and sweet potato and squash and all of those kind of flavors of fall really just match well with the malt flavor in this beer. I'm also thinking of some other things that I like, to eat in the fall. Chili, just a bowl of beef chili would go good with either one of these. I would cook with either one of these. I would probably pour a full bottle of one of these into my pot of chili. I'm also thinking of beef stew, something like that. So again, some of the things I think of when I'm thinking of fall seasonal beers, especially Merton and Festbier, I'm thinking of some of the foods that go with some of the foods that I'm typically eating this time of year as well. German comfort food, pretzels, sausages, schnitzel, sauerkraut can be kind of a nice, refreshing, acidic balance to some of the sweetness from both these beers. And thinking of, a little bit different than kind of that American Eurocentric view, something like a carne adobada. That's, some pork shoulder braised in chili sauce. That's got some nice kind of chili heat, and and that roasted pork or that braised pork can work really well with the malt characteristics, and it's intense enough and matches that intensity of both of these beers. I'm also thinking of pad grapau, which is a really great Thai dish with it's got some herbal Thai basil characters, Thai basil in it that gives this really nice aroma that could match, especially this Festbier. Kind of pull out some of those herbal hop characteristics, but it's moderately spicy. That spice can kind of balance out this malt sweetness, and that sweetness can kind of help tame that spice in the food. So those are some things that come to mind when I'm thinking of food pairings. There's a whole lot of different things. I see a couple of people posting some pairings of their own. So go ahead and post those if you've got them. So right now, I think would be a good time to take some questions. So I've had several questions rolling in. And let's see. One question here is, what temperature should Merton be served at? So, that's a good question, and that's part of this is going to be just a preference thing to a certain degree. Part of it's going to be a cultural thing too. Americans love to have their beer served really cold. The typical serving temperature for like a draft beer, for example, in the United States is 38 degrees. Whereas if you go to, most other European countries, 38 degrees is considered ice cold and way too cold to be serving any beer at. And I tend to agree with that European view to a large degree because, beer that's served too cold will not open up very quickly and give you its true aroma. So, I prefer to have a beer, especially a beer like this, served maybe in the low to mid 40s, just a little bit warmer. I think, 45 is a great temperature for a beer like this. It'll come to you already exhibiting a lot of its aromas and flavors. And as you continue to drink it, it'll warm up even more and continue to open up. And if you're drinking it in a timely manner, it won't be too warm and it won't be at room temperature by the time you're done. So I think that's probably about what you're going to get this beer at in Germany as well, is probably about mid 40s roughly. Let's see. How can you differentiate between a Munich Helles and a Festbier? So the first real noticeable difference is going to be the color. The color is going to be your main differentiating factor right up front. The Oktoberfest, the Märzen beer is going to be a little bit darker typically. And because they've got different malt bases, which are contributing to that color, they're going to come with some different malt flavors. They both are very malt balanced beers, but the Merton is going to have more toasty malt characteristics, and the Festbier is going to have more bread or even cracker-like malt characteristics. That's going to be your main flavor differentiator. You may get some hop aroma and flavor, some herbal or spicy noble hop aroma and flavor from a Festbier that you probably wouldn't get from a Merton as well. So those would be some of the main ways that you can tell the difference between those two. Let's see. Is a dry finish a deterrent on an Oktoberfest? I would say not. It depends on how dry you're talking, right? So an Oktoberfest should not finish sweet, and there can be some malt flavors that carry over into the finish, but it should have a rather crisp finish to it. Now, dry might be taking that a little bit far. So I would say if it's coming across as dry, maybe that is a little bit off-putting. But I would say crisp is probably a little more appropriate. Why do you see a lot of blue, light blue on the branding of these beers? Well, I think I think it's this kind of checkerboardish kind of design, that blue, light blue. This is kind of it's almost like the pattern of Oktoberfest. You'll see this on on flags and banners and backdrops and all over the place at Oktoberfest. So I think that's where it comes from, and I don't know the root of that pattern any deeper than that. Let's see. A bar was serving Dos Equis Amber as their Oktoberfest beer. How close are these beers, and what flavor differences should we have been noticing? So I think that's really interesting that somebody would be serving that as their Oktoberfest beer. There is a loose connection there. So so I mentioned earlier that Gabriel Sedlmayr, when he was researching, doing his research in the 1830s, that ultimately led to the development of Munich malt. He did that research with Anton Dreher, his buddy from Vienna, and Anton Dreher developed Vienna malt and ultimately the Vienna Lager. Now, the Vienna Lager was considered to be kind of a dead style in Vienna, and for a long time, the only versions you could get of Vienna Lager were in Mexico, that had been brewed by these Austrian expats who had come to Mexico in the mid-20th century and started making their Vienna Lager beers there. Well, some of those beers, the descendants of some of those Vienna Lager beers are still around today. And Dos Equis Amber and Negro Modelo are two of those beers. And so some people will consider those beers to be Vienna Lager style, but they've drifted far enough away from what a Vienna Lager really was to, in my mind, to really be representative of that style anymore. A lot of these beers are kind of adjunct heavy and kind of more similar to like an American lager or an international lager than a Vienna Lager. So I could see how someone would make that connection loosely, but I would say, yeah, that Dos Equis Amber is probably not very representative of Vienna Lager anymore. All right, so I'm gonna. Somebody corrected me, or actually informed me. The blue-white checker pattern, is from the blue and white flag of Bavaria. So I've got a lot of the answers, folks, but I don't have every single answer. And some of you need to come help me out with these, which you did. Thank you very much. So let's see. Moving right along. Is the water profile important in brewing these beers? Well, so I would say the answer to that is yes, especially when it comes to Märzen beer. Historically, the Merton beer is very similar to the Munich Dunkel, and these beers in Bavaria benefited from the water content that was high in calcium carbonate, and this calcium carbonate really lends itself to making dark malty beers, and it just makes them taste better. And so calcium carbonate in your brewing water is going to make those dark malty beers just taste a little bit better. Historically, why did decoction mashing become a popular practice when brewing? Well, you know, so in modern day breweries, we have the ability to, we have high-tech equipment that allows the brewers to do step infusion mashing. Step infusion mashing is where you have your mash at a given temperature, where there's certain enzymes that are active creating certain types of sugars. And then you can turn steam onto your mash tun and raise the temperature up to another mash up to another temperature where you have other enzymes active, and now you can create different types of sugars. So those different rests in mashing allow you to control the character of the wort. They allow you to control how fermentable your wort is, and thus the finished character of the beer. And so decoction mashing was a way of being able to do that, raise the temperature of your mash to activate different enzymes and create different fermentability in your wort without high-tech equipment. You remove part of the mash, boil it, return it to the mash, and now you've raised temperature. And in the process, you're also caramelizing sugars, like I said. You're making a richer malt character. So there's some good historic reasons for doing this. And you know, a lot of the reason why a lot of people don't do it anymore is because we have high-tech equipment. We don't need to be using these very labor-intensive processes. Now, some brewers swear by the decoction process, and they insist that it produces a richer, more flavorful malt character. And I tend to believe them. And so they will continue to use decoction mashing for that reason. But other brewers say that they don't think it makes much of a difference, and they just go ahead and rely on high-tech brewing equipment to do that work for them. Okay, so let's see. All right. Well, so I think in the absence of other questions, that seems to be about it. So I appreciate everybody being here to listen to me talk about Oktoberfest, Merton beers, Fest beers, and I encourage you to continue to enjoy them and enjoy the rest of your day. And thanks for joining us here. Come back next week and listen to Pat Fahey at the same time and place talk about American barley wine. I appreciate you being here. Cheers, everybody.